everybody. Welcome. I am beyond elated to have our guests here today. One of our guests is Anne Bray. So Anne Bray has been working at the intersection of public space and media art as a hybrid artist and director of the nonprofit organization Freewaves. She is a visual instigator and translator. Her specialty is finding platforms for pressing and compelling subjects to be broached from various angles in different media. She exhibits that work in formats that publics often unaware of contemporary art can comprehend without the work losing its integrity. I would say she's one of the premier individuals doing this in the United States of California, but I am biased. Carolina Ibarra-Mendoza is a graphic designer, creative director, photographer, and Chicana feminist from East LA, and one of the lead designers for Freewaves' awesome website that we're going to be discussing today. So to discuss LA Freewaves a little bit, LA Freewaves is a Los Angeles nonprofit that produces free, site-specific public art to engage artists and audiences on current social issues. They produce art online, in the streets, with their intersectional network of artists, staff, and curators, challenging society's ideas about race and gender. And beginning in 1989 as a multicultural video art festival on TV and in venues throughout SoCal, since then have grown to host performance art events at IG Live, Dialogues, and one of the largest free digital video art archives. Sorry, mouthful. And so my first question is, which kind of goes into that, which is, what is the story behind why you started Freewaves and how it started?
Oh, wow. A fun topic, of course. So 1989, the American Film Institute which is a big West Coast film organization with a lot of funding from the NEA, and then Sony gave them a lot of money for a video art festival. And people used to come from all over the world to actually go see it. And it's up in Hollywood. And it was like 3 or 4 days of solid video art from all over and highly curated and beautiful international stuff. And a lot of artists would come in. And so it was discussions, right after the screenings and then in between. And it was sort of like a film festival, but with video art, which is a pretty small portion of the world, at all points in history. And so the next year, they lost Sony funding. Like Sony gave up on this idea. And so AFI called me, who was directing the video art program at LACE, and said, oh, why don't you bring all your work here for free because we just lost funding. And I said, I would do that if I could bring all my friends from all over Los Angeles with me. So we sort of instantly did this big consortium, about 40 people, and really mixed, like Latino, Black, White, Asian, Indian, gay, lesbian, straight. We didn't have a non-binary yet, but I think they were there too. And we started right away, like trying to curate our programming across those lines. And the very first one, we started at AFI, and then we started showing it on television, and then we started touring it to El Monte and Monterey Park, and every area in Los Angeles, and ended up going from Santa Barbara to Riverside down to Seal Beach up into like Castaic Lake, and using really public access and trying to get all kinds of people to experience the ideas of the intersection of these works. So doing something like feminist and gay and putting them together and seeing the crossovers, like, oh, we're not just like a feminist program and then the gay program, but the crossover. And it would just really reveal new connections between the works, and not doing things ethnically specific, but we do theme of home, and then how did all the different cultural groups identify with that theme. And it was, intense and hot and debated and, hated and loved, and, all those problems came up immediately.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to say it was almost accidentally extremely intersectional right off the bat, just by happenstance.
And you started in California. And what is the farthest away that people have viewed a Freewaves curated?
It developed. Okay, so it started local, then Southern California, then we started bringing the programs up to the Bay Area, to the public access TV, and then to San Diego. And then we started doing open calls, and around the country, people are submitting it. And then distributors that are like in Canada and Mexico would add in. And then it just kept going, wide. And then, the internet came in, so that if you posted an open call, then anybody anywhere could submit. And
So
they did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, till the 2008 crash. So we just grew and grew very international gradually until that crash. And then I said, oh, Los Angeles needs us right now. Like, let's shrink it back down and take care of the local.
Yeah. So I know that Freewaves has impacted the city of Los Angeles, as you just mentioned, and many individuals over the years. For example, Hollywood Exhibition along Hollywood Boulevard, or the video gallery out the window that was on the city bus system, brought creative art to audiences that might not usually engage with contemporary art. What has been some of the big inflection points regarding personal or community reactions from those Freewaves events over the years?
I don't know.
I prepared for some of these answers, by the way.
Did I print something in the past?
No. I'm just, you're very modest about a lot of these things, but I'm preparing for some I don't knows when, but that's okay.
That's the tragic and beautiful thing about public art that's distributed on buses throughout the city. Is hard to say. It impacts how many millions of impacts are those, but
we have
what are they, and how do you collect them? It's really fascinating.
I mean, there was a lot of press about it, that's for sure. Press did pop up in lots of different places, and I'm sure that it affected a lot of individuals to start thinking about these issues or thinking about art in a way during their commutes or in an ecosystem they might not have seen in order to help it grow. I'm surprised that people don't just come up to you and jump around and say how great it is all the time, but what do I know? But so many moons ago, you envisioned and wanted to innovate in the space of online galleries. And what is and is not an online gallery based on your history and manifestation? What does it mean to be an online gallery in your viewpoint? After all that, this has been a long time of looking at the Freewaves website as an online gallery, looking at researching other galleries as well. Where do you think today we are at with art being online in a gallery?
I think we're still at the beginning. Yeah. In a way, I was sort of, Carolina and I spoke this morning about this a little bit, that we're trying to do more and more that was the intersection of the internet and the real life, and like where can those come together. And so we've been practicing on a few smaller projects, and I really don't know where it's going. That we did ask questions at all these projects that we've done recently. So the idea of a question in relation to the art is one way. So maybe my favorite was the bus. So after we'd show a short video art piece, we'd say text an answer to this question, and it was just at the beginning where people actually could afford to text and ride the bus at the same time. And so we found out early that if you ask really subjective, weird questions, that you get way more interesting answers than if you say, what color was her dress, or, something practical or something that was in the video. Like really interpretive questions were definitely the ones that got the responses.
Yeah. I mean, in my viewpoint, I agree that we're still I think everybody's still in the beginning of what an online gallery is. But one of the things that really illuminated to me when I was looking at Freewaves was the new Dismiss exhibition on the site. And honestly, that felt to me more like an art gallery than I had felt before checking out an art piece. And I think it was the amount of interactivity that was happening there. And I never would have thought that online personal interaction and participation would make it feel more like an art gallery. But there's something about that interaction that really makes me feel like I'm part of that space that encapsulate what an art gallery is accomplishing online. If you guys wouldn't mind talking a little bit about where that came from, the genesis of the inspiration for the exhibition, and along the lines of creating it.
How about Carolina? You want to?
Sure.
Pipe in?
Yeah. So I think in general, my approach is I want things to be accessible and understood. And so I don't think I documented the before shot, but I do remember always being a bit confused, and I felt like the project Dismiss was so multidisciplinary and encompassed a lot of facets. And I'm like, okay, I understood that personally, but then I realized I felt like it was getting lost in translation on the website. So I took a kind of very direct approach. And I want to say, I think it was fairly intuitive. I think Anne already had some of these categories, generally. And not that long ago, actually, we did do a recent update of the website, specifically with the postcards, because that was another aspect that I felt was also a bit confusing. I wanted it to be known that these questions that we keep kind of asking were something that were printed on postcards, and people were the public, they were submitting answers to. And so that was part of the motivation with cleaning up the website. so that it was like very clear the relationships between all these different pieces. And so, yeah, I could answer any more specific questions, but I felt like that was
I'm gonna demonstrate mine.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Very cool.
Very Fluxus with the mailing of the postcards. I love it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
totally.
wow, postcards. Wow.
So
Oh,
I
the
would
magazine.
wear
Beautiful
this
postcards.
to events.
Wow.
And I don't know if it goes a little bit low out of frame. Here it is.
Keep calm and
No,
worship
yeah, we
Beyonce.
Yeah, some of them are really great artworks.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great one.
They're amazing.
Yeah, and I can turn on a light and have it flash in the hemline if it's a night event.
I like the grassroots aspect of this still, just getting the art out there any way you can on your body if necessary.
Yeah, that
I
actually
call myself
goes in
a human postcard rack.
Well, that goes to
Keep
another
art
question,
moving.
which is keep art moving. Well, that's very yeah. What are your thoughts on the connections between public art and social media, web, and online art in that context? Which I think that dress demonstrates quite well.
So the idea was with this at different events, I would just go up and say, do you want a postcard, and they would choose via the image, right? And then I'd say, I'll give it to you if you answer the question on the back. So here's, if you had chosen this one, then I would say, well, who decided your gender? And I could just record the audio, or they could go over in the corner and write the answer on the back and give me a copy. Then I'd give them a clean new copy. Or you go to that page, participate in the website, which I do think classes are doing sometimes. So, it's part of an assignment. I don't know, a gender assignment or a media assignment or interactivity or, so we gathered all the data and we just put it all into Excel columns, and then I handed it over to a data analyst.
Yeah. That's nice. Did you manually curate it, or you said the data analyst? So you kind of went through it in an automated fashion, or what was that like? I mean, how many responses are you going through?
So we got about 1,200.
Wow.
Sort of like, let's say 100 a piece, or which to me was a good enough number to be able to generalize about what were the answers.
Yeah, and definitely the mosaic of answers on the website are interesting in their own right, and just to go through those in a similar way to the art pieces themselves. You're definitely, I mean, that's literally creating a conversation, right? What beyond the conversation, it feels exposure is really important for individuals to be exposed to these topics and think about them as part of their daily lives, to have conversations about these topics. Are there any other kind of tenets to these type of exhibitions that you're looking for classes or students to potentially glean from?
Well, I think to teach us, right?
Right. Yeah.
Where are we at? Like, actually, we've been doing the questions since 2016, and the answers have changed in the 5 years.
That's fascinating. What kind of patterns are you seeing?
Well, like that whole idea of non-binary was 0 to, really a number, a recognizable number, that the one, like, there's one about, let's see, what's your myth or fact about rape? And some people have really no answer, or they have this like total cliche answer, something that they learned in a class, right? And what I'm noticing over the years is that, again, people are being able to do more nuanced answers than these like classroom cliches, right? So the answers are changing.
Once you get into that mindset of thinking about questions that are interesting for society to answer, when do you come up with the questions? Just are they just, is it kind of part of your manifestation through life? Like you see something, you go, that's a great question, you write it down, and that then becomes a question from Freewaves?
So the first I selected the images from the artists, and then I negotiated with them what was the right question for their postcard. And and then we would try it a little bit, because that's the thing with questions, that I had already surveyed the bus riders, and we did another project at Pasadena City Hall, where we asked these totally absurd questions, and it was really fun. And one time I surveyed the people at MoCA, and I was trying to ask them, race, class, gender, and all those, but I didn't want to make it so boring. So we made it sort of buried in these things, like, what does salsa mean? And if you're a white person, it means this. If you're a black person, it means this, and so we'd made these
amazing,
super funny surveys, right?
What advice would you provide for young artists experimenting with their voice and creation process for making art?
One is to listen to themselves.
How do you do that today in today's world? Is that possible?
Yeah. You know what? I feel like I didn't listen to myself at all when I was really young. Oh, you don't know anything. You're not going to be allowed to do anything. Everything is a no by the authorities of the adults. And it has been fairly true. But I feel like, well, this thing of asking questions, that I'm still not listening to myself. I'm really, listening to everybody else.
And so then what is the lens in which you view and select artists for Freewaves and the exhibitions that you're putting on for Freewaves?
One is, again, artists of color to be the dominant, that art that I feel like really surprises me. Like I haven't seen it. I don't even I can't even maybe understand it. If I don't understand it, then I really like it.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh, it's going to take a while to get this one, and then The other is that if somebody that knew nothing about art could really approach it in some way, right? So all these images, I thought they're approachable, right?
Mhm.
You don't have to know who Duchamp is to get it, right? It's just, maybe there's a deeper translation or interpretation if you know art history, but you don't have to. So it surprises, it is intriguing, and it's approachable. And then I could present it to them without totally pissing off whoever's funding me or the venue or whatever, which we have definitely done in the past and had our experiences with that.
Oh, I should say this question in a less blunt way, but I'll maybe add an addendum to the end of it. But does new fine art still exist? Or maybe the nicer way of saying it is the idea of fine art changing over time? So there's art and there's fine art. Is the new creation of fine art, does it actually exist? Or are we just looking at this abundance of art that's finding all these niche areas in which the audiences are starting to appreciate it?
I mean, to me, I feel like COVID has really brought art out. That people have time to see it. They have artists are home making it.
Right.
They have nothing else to do. There are, I think we're living in such a swirl of information and paranoia that everyone is just having very strong feelings, right? And that art is about how are you reacting? How are you feeling? What do you think this is? And like you could take your feelings about Biden or Trump or whatever and put it onto this artwork, and it'll be totally satisfying. Where you can't do anything about Biden or Trump, but this postcard could do something.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, the age of turmoil and tumult creates a lot of things.
How about Carolina?
Often the best.
Yeah, let's ask her. Carolina, how would you answer that question?
Well, that was a tough question. I feel like I relate to that observation of like mass information. That's kind of how I feel, especially, so I'm like a millennial, and it's interesting to see like the evolution of information in that sense. I have an older sister, and she's older by like 7 years. And so that was like enough time for me to really have like a completely different experience of the world. And I felt like I had access to the internet as a teenager, all the pros and cons that comes with that. And I don't know, I do feel like I see it in a lot of my friends and my community that there is a good amount of like optimism because there's such an abundance with the information. And then how do you respond to that? And I think there's definitely seeming like this evidence that people are more empowered to just even share their opinion, right? To the point that maybe it could get like, to levels of trolls or, that would be one extreme. But yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
Actually, kind of dovetail to that, but more in the concept of the art that we see and the art that's created, how have you seen the constant flux of technology affect the discourse and language of media art?
Well, it's been moving fast, right?
Right.
And, like I just think of all these beautiful, gorgeous, complicated pieces that were made on CDs and, that no one will ever see because they put so much time into the coding, and then the web took over and the programming changed and you cannot see that item anymore. And that is huge. We took over like this library at USC for 1 week, and we had a different CD on every computer in the whole library. And, the audience came in and just sort of went around visiting different computers. And I just, that whole era of work, will never exist ever again.
Yeah. It's fascinating these days, even web rot, just web pages can't last very long or unless they're really well designed, but it's kind of amazing how many sites are inaccessible very quickly within even a few years, let alone an extended period of time. Stuff from 10 years ago, you almost can't look at anymore, which is odd.
Yeah. Huh.
What do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I got this new piece that I'll send you the link afterwards, and I can't remember their name.
Oh,
but
great.
it's this gorgeous new thing that you have to give them permission for your face to appear in it. But it's an engagement with yourself on your own monitor. And
love it. Wow.
It's a brand new piece that just got launched, and it's like, holy, I've never talked to myself in the,
We'll find out who the true narcissists are that just sit there all day and talk to themselves.
This is the best art piece I've ever experienced.
I really like this one.
There's been talk about in the fine art world, based on a lot of the theoretical tenets of progressing the medium of fine art, and the originality therein, right? For a very long time, individuals, you create something, they're like, well, that's not really original because, like you're mentioning, Duchamp made that before in this iteration, or Warhol might have done it this way, so yours might be a new version of that, but it's not as original in thought. Do you feel that technology is kind of that new medium to express older theoretical principles? Kind of like what you're referring to as well, might have been a mirror back in the day. Are you seeing that technology is playing a role of bringing back some of these older fine art theoretical principles in new mediums?
I haven't thought about that idea, but I feel like the technology is making people appreciate what is happening emotionally more.
Interesting.
Because they're so sort of fed up with the tech, or the spending so much time with the computer, that their appreciation for the antidote and for the live and for the public and let's get out of this office and or bedroom and go somewhere and do something, and let's actually have feelings with each other instead of alone. The
connection is more important. The in-person connection is still so much more powerful than the online.
Yeah, I think no one knew that personal connection was a big deal for people. I think even people used to sort of deny it, like I don't need all that stuff. I'm self-sufficient. And like no one's self-sufficient today, right?
Okay, so I'm going to throw something out there, and I just would love your thoughts on this. So, artificial intelligence is starting to play a larger role, and I know you're aware of artificial intelligence and some of its uses. And then one of the big things is actually uh, now we're dealing with such huge data sets that it's going to get chunked down into smaller pieces, and they will essentially go to an audience and say, well, you have four different options here, four different biases, essentially, to choose from. Would you like the ecological one? Would you like the conservative approach? On and on and on, right? Where do you feel that bias begins in the art making process? Because that feels like when it happens at that point in time, that feels like to me late stage bias. If I were to put a title on, right? Where do you feel that the bias begins in the art making process or art decision making process, where the artist is trying to kind of exude something from their piece or in their practice?
Oh. Wow, because I just went to a show by Rianne Estrada at the Asian Art Museum in Pasadena on artificial intelligence, really on face recognition, and a few other, techniques of AI. And there is a group here in LA, they're called feminism.ai, something like that. And I think
Great domain.
the racism, the sexism, the political, opinion part of it is so intense. And every day I feel like I hear another intense example, like totally frightening example of, of this control, sort of the real. And it does remind me, this is what I used to think of television, was that there was this huge system. Oh, there are only 3 channels, and all of it's garbage. And it's pumping you with, the racist, sexist, commercial, like it's just dangling things in front of you, trying to make you buy X,
right?
And it was just buying your eyeballs, right? And okay, now they've bought our eyeballs. Now they know, oh, you're looking at the right corner, not the left corner. You want bananas, not peanut butter. And
yeah, eye tracking software.
Yeah, it's
so
I'm terrified.
Yeah, me as well. I mean, I think they say every movie now they put a test audience and an EKG machines to see how they react to each scene, and they recut the movie to make it even more enthralling. It's just really scary stuff. Neuromarketing, I think it is.
Mm-hmm. That sounds about right. We would do that.
Yeah, right.
Left corner marketing versus right corner, bottom.
Make it more
corner.
addictive.
Yeah.
So there's a go ahead. We
didn't answer your question though.
You brought up a new question, I guess. So what I like to call that artificial narratives. What you're referring to, and it is a recognition of these artificial narratives that are in our lives, and to try to be mindful of what it is that you're looking at and the aesthetics that you're trying to consume, and to kind of get better at wrangling that so that you can identify it and then at the end make a decision that fits your actual bias, right? And it sounds like those are the types of things that you're kind of referring to when you're watching TV. It was this constant narrative of, I don't know.
Manipulation.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some products like Colgate toothpaste or something like that, right? But it's just this it is a form of manipulation, but it's just a constant narrative that if you get on that boat, you're just going to go down the river with that narrative, right? What are some things after the TV that were useful in order to guide people another direction or to give them more autonomy over the decision-making process? In your view?
To me, that's what I think art is it's like a total question asking, there's never a right answer or right interpretation of anything artistic. You are not right and you are not wrong.
Yep.
And you have to decide for yourself, right? And you can argue that your opinion is the correct interpretation, I think, always.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it.
The goal really is self-consciousness, right?
Right.
So what do you watch? Do you watch things that are made by artists or by corporations? And like we're making that choice as much as we can, right? Again, how much do you pay attention to yourself? Like, do you remember your dreams? Do you interpret your dreams? Do you keep a journal? Do you keep, asking yourself questions? Do you know really what you think and feel? And how much do you know of what you think and feel? And are they your opinions or are they just inherited ones from your environment, right?
How long would somebody expect a process like this to take? About the length of an MFA?
One lifetime, yeah.
Well, it never ends, right?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
You pick up new ones.
And that's so cool to me. Like,
yeah.
I have as many questions now as I did, right? It's just like maybe they're more fine-tuned, right?
Absolutely. I love that. That's amazing. I do think art is a great antidote for the current world we're in. And focusing in on those pieces made by different individuals that have autonomy, that are asking intriguing questions or provoking intriguing questions, such as the work that you select, and kind of leading you down that path where they are unique enough objects that you want to spend some more time to think about them, and then translate that thought process onto everyday objects at the same time, or advertisement you might see, or media you might see. Right?
I just made this one yesterday. It's a little ad board.
It's amazing.
Scared, scarred. I love it. It's nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really good at working with words.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you're supposed to put in the front window of your store.
So what is coming in the future of Freewaves as a platform and with curation?
We just figuring out, because we're finishing a book on dismiss, so that's sort of wrapping up a 5-year process. And then there's 2 other things I'm starting and simultaneously. One is we want to do one on masculinities, plural. Like nice. Let's redesign it, reinvent it. Like, what is it? It's cool. Such a cliche, and it really should be diversified a lot more than it has been. So we're going to start doing conversations and leading, and I'm not sure online or how they're going to do it. Meaning we were thinking about having clubhouse discussions.
Oh, right.
But I don't know. And then, or, going to Twitter and posing questions. But we are going to do workshops with an artist, Marcus Quilan Nazario, who's already been asking people, and a lot of them young people, like, what did you learn about masculinity from your dad?
Wow.
And just, letting people answer each other. And so that's going to eventually, like a year from now, become a night of performance art in a public space of some kind, where maybe 10 different performance artists really do a piece. But I think we're going to inform them what we're finding out from the question process. And do you have any question about that one? Because then I'm going to tell you the other one.
Keep going. Yeah, sounds great.
So the other one is this. It's called Actually Curious. And it's sort of a former ad agency in New York has become an empathy card maker in Boston. And they're called Curiosity Lab. And these cards, they're different layers to them. I like the white layer the most, maybe because it matches my skin tone.
Biases.
But there are easier ones and harder ones, but I found these are the most subliminal of all of them. And they really are like these, let's see.
It's like empathy tarot, or?
Yeah, exactly. They're questions. What's something that triggers fear in you, and how does your body respond to it? So if you were asking that at an office or a classroom or a government agency, and those people all worked with each other or went to school together, like, you would really find out something else about that person that you worked with all the time. And then as you went around the room, all these different people answering it, you would, I think, really find out, like, oh, your answer's really different than other people's answer. So why do you think everyone should respond your way to everything else in your life? Like, really learn about difference without judgment is how I would call it. And they call it empathy, but I'm not as empathetic, so I call it difference without judgment.
Wow, talk about a great, it fits so well into that, mission of sharing experience. That's just, what a cool game. That's, or piece. That sounds like it's going to be great.
Yeah, they're good questions.
Yeah, I want to do that with my kids.
When I have people over for dinner, we do one late in the evening. And even with close friends, you really find out something different that you sort of never knew about.
Right, because they're deep and uncommon kind of things to talk about. They also might be the future of CAPTCHAs to prove that it's a real human. How would you answer that? Are you a machine or a human?
Describe a person you have difficulty connecting with. Why do you think that is so?
Go ahead, Josh.
Maybe I don't want to play
Let's
this with my
play
kids.
right
No,
now.
just kidding. Just kidding.
They're
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, they're gonna be honest answers, maybe. So you gotta watch out what you ask for.
Yeah.
My much younger brother, because of something with masculinity, that's actually true. Jeez. All right. That's that's a good.
Okay. What are you willing to fight for and why?
On Justin now.
So many things, actually. So that's it's hard narrowing down, actually, for me. But what am I willing to fight for and why? I think actually this topic that we're talking about right now, and that's why we are doing these YouTube videos and why we teach, is we're really willing to fight for people to have their own autonomy to make decisions and critically discuss things, so that they start really understanding their own world and then the influences that impact the world that they're living in. And you brought it up earlier, and I really do think it is something that's actually really needed right now, and the focus should really be on that for individuals to understand in order to kind of live in this current world with all these crazy amounts of inputs of media and advertisements. We were just talking about a blog that we were reading that an individual went to look at if it was true that people saw between 4,000 to 10,000 just advertisements a day, and they pretty much figured out that it was doable before they had breakfast. Like and those are just advertisements. That doesn't include branding or mnemonics or other types of bias that you're referring to and things like that. And that, for me, I think it's really important that people are able to deduce what is real to them and really what the things are that they want to. So that's mine. I can't wait for. Yeah. I think we all should answer this now. Let's give it to Carolina. I think this is wonderful. Carolina, are you willing to answer one?
Yeah, what are you willing to fight for?
Oh, man. Well, just because you got me thinking about that topic, now it's made me think about media literacy. Mm-hmm. And I think considering everything that happened with Trump's election, it has made it all the more clear how important that is. And so I think like something is, to think of my experience early on in the internet, I used to think of how trivial and fun it was. I would have never anticipated as a teenager that it would have such a significant real life impact in the way it did with like the political side of the world. And so I kind of see how a lot of people, if we don't already know about something, then it seems really easy for people to just kind of accept things at face value. And that could be a little bit scary, I think, going back into what you were saying about like learning about difference without judgment. I feel like there's a lot of judgment online. I see a lot of the how opinions then inform this like really this like harsh way of operating. And like we're human, we shouldn't be so like harsh with ourselves. And so I kind of think like media literacy seems really important, especially in how it influences like tribalism, because it seems like that's kind of the result of it, and how easy it is for people to then be with like-minded people, and then you're just in this like little bubble. And I think
you want to talk about your body positive.
Oh, my new project right now. Yeah, sure. So I'm right now working with a client. She runs this performance called Thick Strip Enterprises. And so they're nice. The first, body positive strip show, like in LA.
Wow.
And I'm going to be like working on some of their promos for their first live event happening next month. But yeah, I think even I actually have to constantly check myself and my biases. Like I try to be at this point in my life, I try to be pretty transparent with myself, at least, on like which biases I'm still like working on. Because I've been, like I'm a product of society. So of course, the idea of body positivity has now been co-opted to also like sell me stretchy jeans or sell me, and so it's always this thing that you need to be like constantly updating yourself of like, well, I need to accept my body the way it is. I also need to accept other people's bodies the way they are. Why is it that certain bodies, I expect them to be like sexy, but these like, I have to think about it more, like why? Right. And so, even with that client, I'm like really excited to work on it because I'm like, I honestly don't see that content ever. Like these like beautiful, fat, amazing women doing sexy stuff. It's like, I just don't, where do we see it? At least now I feel like it's starting to come up with like pop stars like Lizzo. I think it's definitely starting to make its way, but even something as basic as that, right, are human physical bodies and how that is represented in media or online is just constantly like, I feel like being updated. Yeah, so I don't know. I would fight for a lot of things, basically. Again, I'm a Chicana feminist. I work at Freewaves. I have that fighter spirit, and
it's there's a lot of what you wouldn't fight about.
Yeah.
Wow, that project sounds great. I'm sure that'll be super popular. Oh, sorry.
As teachers, teaching sort of is fighting.
Yeah.
Right.
You're fighting people's biases.
Like your lack of information or prejudice against that information, and that in a way you're negotiating that difference.
Yeah, and especially where we teach, we're teaching at the city college, and we also have to fight even past history, or we're a place where it should be a clean slate. And so there's also just anybody that comes into the class deserves a clean slate, because that's why they're there for the class period. So it's the starting point is the first day of class. And it's an amazing experience, though, because the groups of people, how they unite together, and the things that people create along those lines as well. But 100% teachers, that's probably one of the more important places is teachers to try fighting their biases as much as possible.
And talk about diverse students at the city college. We have, high school students, and then people in their 40s and 50s and beyond. And the high school students will come in and say, that's gay, in like a derogatory way. We have to check that, just the craziest things we deal with. So very diverse.
Because everyone's like at different stages in their life and awareness.
It's pretty fascinating in that way, and trying to just hold space.
Intergenerational exchange, right?
Yeah. Here's one for I'll one more, and then we'll close up here, because I don't want to keep you too long. But this kind of has started to devolve into what feels like just like a dinner at Anne Bray's house, to be honest, which is amazing.
Seems wonderful.
You're welcome.
It's the best kind ever. Another interesting topic that I'm seeing more and more that I think is going to become more prevalent, I could be wrong, I'm wrong all the time, which is something that sci-fi has been saying a while. I don't think it's going to be as demonstrative as people see in sci-fi, but you have the utopian technological mentality and the dystopian technological mentality. And the utopians are moving into cities where the dystopians don't really have a choice, because the cities like San Francisco, in one of them? That's right. Perhaps. I mean, and of course,
Is it
I like
Oakland
both
versus
sides.
the
I,
South Bay?
I think both sides present really great advantages, but I think once again it's going to come down to a respect for both of the different styles of mentality and belief on where societies could go. Or okay, this area is more dystopian in nature. The utopian saying, okay, let's let them continue their glamping lifestyle and not go build a high rise over there, or bring our automated cars, right? It feels like if those type of levels of respect can start to glue together, that it's going to save a lot of people from getting really distressed during those type of times. It feels another topic which is non-gender related, but definitely a dividing line that I think is going to start growing a lot over the next 20 years. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that one.
Well, I feel like I spent sort of the late 70s, early 80s at MIT, and there was so much utopian perspective. And I feel like each time, some new tech came out, that utopian, I've just heard it. And always it's young people that are saying it to me, and then they, right. Something else, like they realize, oh, just 3 corporations own all of that right now. So I'm not feeling as utopian as I was.
The possibilities are amazing, like smart cities, the advancements. I like them both, I really do. But the question is, are they going to be able to both coexist together, or is one going to try, or is that friction just going to create a really toxic environment?
Do you think it's really like the Democrats and the Republicans?
Kind of. I think Democrats and Republicans are different. They have different beliefs and things like that. I'm not saying that Democrats are utopians and Republicans. I think there's a divide. I think there's a divide that's going to continue to grow in the same way the digital divide exists. I think that this is one of those divides that's going to grow over time as these things start to happen. When they start saying, your car around here is kind of getting in the way of our grid. When we just have all the autonomous cars, it's better you don't try to drive at all. There's going to be a lot of people that start saying, wait a second, and then the opposite, right? Where people might be living in a place that's very natural, and they're trying to bring all this technology to innovate. And so the question is, are people going to be respectful of kind of those different mentalities moving forward? And yeah, I think that could be a new kind of, I don't know if it's political, I don't know what the right term is, but definitely a dividing line that might start to grow.
Seems a little bit of that.
Yeah, we're already having trouble with democracy on any issue.
Yeah. Where is this happening, Anne? Where's it?
Like, are we good? I mean, to me, this, I don't know. I just feel like technology just moves. It just goes. Right. And it's just part of the corporate. And like, people make money from the tech, and then they get control via the tech, and then they just become the majority through those methods. Their money leads to the power, and so then you're left in the dust if you one of the dystopian believers and not you falling into
but yeah,
if you don't buy it, literally and figuratively.
Yes,
I did a piece. I don't buy it, but I pay for it.
In Times Square
on the big screen.
That's funny.
He did that in 1980.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's what's kind of concerning because there's value on both sides, right?
Mhm.
And that the one value is just not going to be necessarily valued. To use the word twice in different ways, but yeah, that's interesting and interesting what you said. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been amazing.